Hello there and welcome to another self-promotion, to say the very least. This is a self-promotion for another one of my books. This is The Four Friends, Volume 1. And in Volume 1 we see 4 short adventures featuring the characters Charlie, Brock, Spencer and Anna. Now, I'm only promoting this because, of course, well, why not? And also, this video may or may not be appropriate for this sort of promotion if you have younger ones, because this is a book for younger audiences. So I hope you buy a copy today, or at least pre-order whenever this gets released. Of course, it's released on the 5th of December 2025, and of course, if this video is before or after that time, it really depends, obviously. But regardless, I hope you enjoy the remainder of this video. This is just a very short, shameless promotion for my own stuff so you can give me more money. I mean, entertain yourselves with one of my products. Hello there and welcome to another tier list ranking video. This time we're going to have a look at Barber-Ous Extreme 2. Obviously this is keeping the trend of all the other Barber-Ous ranking videos where we're going through every single competitor and ranking them from S to Jokebot. Now obviously if you know how these ranking videos work, you know that in the middle we have the great design but ineffective, and ineffective but poor design I meant to add, but effective, which basically means that a robot can look really good but not be very good in combat, or vice versa. It could have a great design, or it could look really poor, I should say, but be quite effective. I really screwed that up, didn't I? Anyways, this is S to Jokebot on the best and worst that Extreme 2 has to offer, which is, in many ways, Extreme 2 is the goodbye to a lot of famous faces, a goodbye to a lot of beloved robots and their teams, essentially. But at the same time, it shows us a few faces that weren't in Series 6 and the returnees in that sense who will make an appearance in Series 7 as well. In some cases, maybe not Series 7, maybe another series later down the line. Regardless, let's start the list off with 13 Black. 13 Black is still basically the Series 6 version. You're going to see this a lot with quite a few of them, honestly, where they are basically the version that you see in Series 6 or 7. And so a lot of the opinions are going to be more or less the same with 13 Black. I think this is the best 13 Black by far. You know, the design looks great. The holographic green, I love the holographic green. I think it looks fantastic. Combine that with the very deadly power of the discs. You know, you have a robot that can just smash into other robots and just slice them to pieces. It did quite well here, actually. It fought Razor, Chaos 2, and Dominator all in one. Razor was actually knocked out by this thing at the end of the battle. You know, Chaos 2 suffered heavy blows, was torn to pieces, essentially, and Dominator was knocked off on one side. So really, this is quite an impressive little machine. You know, it really did well, looks really good. For me personally, I'm not been the biggest 13 Black fan. Like, it's not a robot I always fawn over, but I can see why a lot of people would, because it is just a great looking robot. It's a great looking design. It does everything you want. So I'm going to put it in S tier, like straight away. It's S tier because it really, really is good. Alright, so up next is 259, not to be confused with the heavyweight 259. This is the 259 middleweight. Essentially the same as the 259 heavyweight, although I think the disc doesn't look as good here. I think the disc in the heavyweight version looked so much better, but that's just a personal nitpick. Overall, this is still a very, very gorgeous design, a beautiful design, and arguably better than the heavyweight version, because the heavyweight version died after its second fight each time, whereas the middleweight version looked like it could have won the championship had it not essentially been cheated out of it by Typhoon bots or teaming up against one another, against the other opponents, I should say, which, still to this day is one of the more controversial moments in Barber-Ous. I really like 259. I am not keen on its name, though. I don't know, I feel like it should have been given like a separate name, like 259-bit or something. I don't know. It just doesn't, I don't know, I'm not a fan of having robots have the same name as their other robots, it just it's kind of lazy. Like, you can literally just pick a random robot name generator or something and just pick something out there, or select something that's never been used. I don't know. But regardless, I still like it. It's going to be an A tier, though, because obviously the name is still the same, and I'm not the biggest fan of the way the disc looks this time. But regardless, I still like this robot. I still think it's great. Wonderful design, wonderful competitor. Up next is AM Surveying. I Am Surveying, or AMCVN. This is the miniature version of CV, or Cataclysmic Variabot. Now, I've just mentioned, with 259, I'm not a really big fan of robots using the same name. This is a good example of what happens when you can use a different name, even if one could argue the name is a little bit weird. I think the name is meant to be like am surveying, like, I am surveying the landscape sort of business. I don't know. I think that is what the gag in the name is meant to be. This is a miniature version of Cataclysmic Variable. I think it looks good. Honestly, I think it looks really good. In terms of effectiveness, we didn't see much of it. It sort of it was in the highlight clips, and as a result, you don't get to see a lot. And I don't think it was doing very well. It looked like it was dead in the arena, which is not a great look for the robot. I think it looks great, though. I think, the miniaturized version of the heavyweight, and it looks like it could have been effective. Like, the problem is we don't get to see a lot of it, and as a result, what we see is a robot that it's confusing and hard to really judge. I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to give it a C ranking, just because it might have been effective, might have been decent, but at the same time, we didn't see it because the highlight reel, for some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to have a highlight reel instead of just showing the fights. I would rather see the fights than the highlight reels. Maybe then my opinion would drop down to great design but ineffective, but it's around that area. Up next is our first Antweight, Anti-B. Anti-B. Now, if you were to compare this to the Anti-B of the past, or previously, the previous Anti-B, I'm fairly sure had a lot more bulk around the sides, which made it look a little bit kind of better, dare say. Still, again, miniaturized version of a big heavyweight. This one is Behemoth, but as an Antweight, and I love the look of it. This is what a Behemoth toy would probably have looked like. I think it's great. In terms of effectiveness, it was very effective, which is funny because if you saw it in the Antweight World Series, it lost in the first round, I should say, like multiple times. It never really got far in the Antweight World Series, but in Real Wars, it seemed to do much better. You gotta wonder what's going on there. So yeah, Anti-B, I like it. It's a great miniaturized version. I'm not a fan of the sides, though. The sides being exposed, it rubs me the wrong way. I might actually rank it higher than 259, just because I like the design more. Alright, so up next is Anti-Geddon. Now, I am a bit of a sucker when it comes to the Antweights. I like the Antweights. I think they're great. I think they're fun. I think they're wonderful. And, there's so many creative Antweights, especially nowadays. So to see a robot like this, which is essentially just a bunch of scraps put together, it's not the best, to say the very least. And it wasn't very good in general because it seemed to have just been demolished in its fight straight away without much rhyme or reason. It's funny, with the World Series, there was a robot that was called, Armageddon, and it had a very similar, bulky design, except it was just completely white and it had an axe. But I did wonder if this was meant to be the same robot. I don't know, but regardless, this robot is either a stock robot or was literally built by one of the random roboteers at the time and decided, hey, let's just, add it in. Because it never appeared in World Series, and so you don't have much information on this thing. But based on what we saw in the highlight reel, this was not a very good robot. In terms of design, I am actually really confused looking at it. I don't know what it's meant to do. It's got big wheels, sure, and it looks like it could ram, but what about does it have an axe? Is that an axe? But the axe wouldn't be able to go all the way because it would get stuck on the top part of the robot. It's very flappy and it's very weird, and I'm not sure about this one. Gotta be honest, I think I might put an F tier because this one is just so crap. Alright, so up next is ARG. ARG. This is a Gloucester robot. This is one from the Repturon team, in fact. Now, Repturon, we've seen before, a very beautiful robot, that bronze look. It's very gorgeous looking. And ARG, arguably, should be, it isn't as beautiful in that sense, but it is very effective. It is a very effective robot and a very good looking effective robot, even if it isn't bronze. So color scheme aside, this robot could tear robots apart, it could throw them up in the air. It was a little featherweight that was just incredibly dangerous, and I love it. It's great, There's not really much to say, the name is quite funny as well. ARG, as if you're, raging at this thing, ripping your robot apart. I like it. I like it a lot. I really do like ARG. I've always been kind of keen on ARG. And, I just think the colour scheme probably could have been better. But regardless, it's just a colour scheme. Who cares? I mean, I think it's because the teams of a robot. Repturon is that beautiful bronze. I'm just, ranting now. Alright, up next is Barbaric Response. Barbaric Response is back, and I'm trying to remember what it did. It was tag team. Yes, it was tag team, and Barbaric Response isn't bad of a robot. It's had a slight improvement to the look of it compared to Series 6. Very minor, mind you. It's not stuff that you'd notice fully. But Barbaric Response, it's okay. Like, I've always been middle of the road with Barbaric Response because it's not a pretty looking robot. But it's not a terrible robot. It's just in the right circumstance, it probably could do really well. It could do stupendously. It could probably rip apart or flip over robots here and there. It could probably, win a fight or two. It just never did. It was really put into poor situations, I'd find. And yeah, for me personally, it's a very middle-of-the-road robot. It's not bad, not good. It's just okay, I've never been that big into Barbaric Response, personally. I'm almost tempted to put in the D, but it's not that weak. It's not that bad. Barber-Ous. Now, Barber-Ous, this is a tragic robot. I would think Barber-Ous is tragic because you look at this thing and, it's really powerful, really deadly with that, drum blade. And it never really had much success. Series 6 was its best performance. It got to the Heat final. And, after that, it just lost in, the first rounds of anything. Or lost side events, It lost in the first round of Series 5, It had way more losses than wins. And yet, it looks like a robot that should have had more wins. It looks like a robot that, you'd think would have more wins. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It's a real shame because I really do think that it's a good looking robot. And what makes it even worse for me personally is the fact that Barber-Ous is a robot that looks the part. It really does seem effective in its approach. It just never... It had reliability problems, I feel like. I feel like it had, opponents that were just too hard for it to deal with. Which is a shame, because I think Barber-Ous is a fantastic robot. And it's hard, because personally I'd rank it quite highly, but at the same time, if you to be objective about it, it probably would go in the great design but ineffective category. or C tier, because it really is one of those robots where it's like, it's a tough one. I personally am going to put it in B because I like this robot. I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. I think the design is fantastic. I think it's effective. But unfortunately, it is a robot that just suffers under its own weight. And it's a robot that never really got going. It never had great success. And it's a shame because it really deserved to have more. Bash Gordon's up next. Now, this robot is one of the New Blood ones, and it's a big yellow blob with, I think, is a spike axe thing, lance, whatever. I don't like its design. It's a very basic bitch design. It's just very blocky, very there. Its weapon, I don't think, was effective at all. I don't think it actually did anything. And it didn't really do much in combat. Like, it lost, and that was about it. That's its career in a nutshell. It lost, got ripped apart. That's it. You can tell this thing lost in the qualifier for Series 6, can't you? It looks like the type of robot that would just be destroyed in 5 seconds while the others kill each other for the qualifiers. I like the name, maybe. I think that's as much as I can say. I'm going to put this into F tier. I'm going to be honest. This is a robot that just doesn't look good. It doesn't act good. It's not good. It is just, yeah. Alright, so up next is Behemoth. Now, Behemoth is quite funny in Extreme 2 because it's so obvious they wanted Behemoth to win a competition because Behemoth was doing poorer and poorer as the years were going by. It went from being semi-finalist in Series 2, Heat finalist in Series 3 and 4, runners-up in the World Championship. Then suddenly, Series 5 and Extreme come along, it's losing in the second round. It basically was knocked out in the first round of Series 6, but then progressed into round 2, where it just got dumped in the pit unceremoniously. And it was clear that they really wanted Behemoth to win something. Like, there's probably a reason why they gave it the challenge belt in Extreme 1, because they wanted it to be, seen as a more impressive robot than it actually was. I will say this, I do prefer the artwork for Behemoth in Extreme 2 compared to Series 6 with that black. It just didn't look very good in Series 6. This one is much better. This one is technically the one that you see in Series 7 as well. Like, it's the exact same robot. But unfortunately for the production team, it seems like Behemoth just didn't work. Like, in the Iron Maiden, to be fair, Behemoth were screwed over. They were screwed over by Shunt. Shunt righted Chompalot and then proceeded to send its axe straight through the top and knock it out. Then in the University Challenge, it was knocked out by an axe blow. It was an axe blow from CV of all robots. So as a result, what you ended up getting was a robot that just didn't really work well. It's a shame, really, because Behemoth does look the part, but this is the point of really where Behemoth's effectiveness is down. It is really, really down. It's, it's actually to the point where I would argue this is great design but ineffective, because Behemoth at this point is really bad. Like, it's going to get, even in Series 7, it's not going to work, as effectively. And you'd think, the bigger the bulkier it got, it'd be better, but it just didn't. It isn't until the reboot, really, where you see a more functional and reliable Behemoth, if they don't screw themselves over through circumstances such as, a useless claw mechanism. But, yeah, like, Behemoth really is suffering badly by this point. It's gorgeous design, and I'm going to put it into B. I'm going to be nice and put it into B. I'm going to put it next to Barber-Ous because, like Barber-Ous, it's a great-looking robot. It can be effective, but unfortunately, it's just circumstances by this point, which are preventing it from functioning now. Bernard is up next. Now, Bernard is interesting. It's a robot that did well, to be fair. Like, it's one of those weird robots that did well, even though you wouldn't expect it to do well. Like, you look at this thing and you think, how the hell did it get as far as it did? But it did. It's quite a funny name as well, just Bernard. It's so simple and so silly. Bernard is a very basic design. It's a wedge design with a little disc on top. There's not really much to write home about. Like, it's quite a durable little thing. It's surprisingly not that bad of a robot. It's not the most beautiful looking. That's the thing. It's a very interesting design. I have put Behemoth and Barber-Ous in B tier. And Bernard, while it is a good robot, it's not a spectacular robot by any chance. It's just not spectacular. I'm gonna be nice and put it into B tier regardless, because it is an effective robot, but it's weird. So up next is Bigger Brother. Now, Bigger Brother in Extreme 2 is really impressive. Like, it managed to beat the reigning champions Tornado just by, dominating it. And it really makes you wonder how well it would have done had it faced Tornado in the main championship or done something similar. Like, it's one of those things which you gotta wonder, how brilliant would it have gone? Bigger Brother also was in the it was in the charred one, Minor Meltdown. Now, in Minor Meltdown, it won the championship there, fairly obviously so, because compared to its other opponents, yeah. But yeah, Bigger Brother, still really good looking robot, still very powerful, still very, it's just really, really good. Like, Bigger Brother is an S tier robot for sure. For sure. Alright, so up next is Black Hole. Now, Black Hole is, aside from being the Labour Party's favourite words I should say, it's a robot that really is good if you look at it in the German championship, which is not the highest quality championship in the world. It is only 3 episodes, and one of them is an episode where none of the robots work. There's a reason why it was number 1's worst episode ever. But Black Hole is a very, very, very good looking robot. It can be effective. It's just, unfortunately, it's one of those robots that is kind of screwed over by what happens in the event of the show, where it just has bad luck. Like, that's the thing. It's one of those robots that you have to wonder what would have happened if circumstances were different. Maybe it would have been better, maybe it would have been worse, who knows. We saw it destroy Zeus, and it's such a great, opening fight that when you see it later on, it's like, oh, where does that robot go? So, Black Hole, it's a great looking robot, great looking design, and it was somewhat effective. It's just not perfect. So, again, it's going to go up there, but it's not going to be for the S tier. Alright, so up next is Bondi Titch. Now, technically speaking, Bondi Titch is a stock robot. It is not built for purpose in the sense that, it's going to be this brilliantly effective robot that's going to, smash the competition. Majority, if not all, the stock robots are very poorly built. They are very simple, and they are there literally to be replaceable if they get destroyed. So you can destroy this robot, you can replace the bit very quickly, and it'll be fit as a fiddle. It's also notoriously, low quality compared to like something like Razor or Behemoth or anything like that. So Bondi Titch is a very low quality looking robot. I'm almost hesitant to call it a joke bot because of just how it looks. But I don't know what to say. Like, on one end, this is not a very good robot at all. But at the same time, I can't help but laugh at that gigantic hammer. Like, it's such a silly looking design. But yeah, like Bondi Titch, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's one of those robots that's hard to judge because you have to keep in mind this is a stock robot. It's not a real competitor robot technically, and so with that in mind, maybe it's not brilliant. But at the same time, you know, I don't know. It's an odd robot. It's an odd one to think about. I'm going to put it in D, just because it's not as bad as the other two, but also, yeah, look at it. All right, so up next is Broadsword. Now, Broadsword is interesting because there is quite a bit of history behind the scenes with this robot. So it fought in the qualifiers with a heavyweight version of Broadsword, where it fought Destructor Bubble, Exterminator, and another robot, which was apparently, it looked just like Invertebrate. Maybe it was Invertebrate, who knows? But we don't know, and it lost in that. But then in the actual TV televised battle that it was in, apparently it did quite well. It used its sword quite well, and it actually jammed up Typhoon. But in the TV edit, we just see it messing around by the sidewall, and it gets completely, utterly gutted and destroyed by Growler, I think it is, as well as the Typhoon. Yeah, like, this is a robot that has a lot of history. Now, in terms of design, the design is so ugly. It almost looks like a penis if you look at it from above. The big wheels, the long sword, it looks like a penis. But not just that, but like, it's just it's like that bare bones, like basic look of just white paint over a wooden shell. Maybe it was very effective in the untelevised edit. We don't know because we've never seen it. And what we do see, we see a robot that just doesn't seem like it's really that effective. Like, it just seemed like it's kind of just dawdling. And then it got brutally killed in, you know, a really gory way. Again, I wouldn't say this is completely trash, I guess. It's just, yeah. Like, it's one of those things where we need to see the untelevised versions of these fights. Like, if the Iron Ore team were able to get VHS tapes of their untelevised fight, of the raw fights, I should say, then surely, you know, other teams would have something similar. You know, maybe the Broadsword team have their own. If you think about it like that, like, maybe the Broadsword team have a VHS tape somewhere where they could show the world what actually happened. You know, just get a few wires, a few, what are they called? The thing that you can connect to a VHS player so that you can record it from the computer. What is it? Capture cards. Jesus. Yeah, just get a capture card that can connect to a VHS player, and you can then record the stuff from the VHS onto your computer and just, you know, upload it somewhere. Like, I feel like if we see the real fight, then maybe I can somewhat believe you with what happened. You know, I'm just saying, you know, because there's a lot of people a lot of teams that probably say, oh, wow, we did a million times better. And we managed to destroy Sir Kill-A-Lot in the fight. And the truth is, their robot is like this wooden box with a tiny little nail for a weapon. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, at some point you have to question some of the reliability from teams and people who say that they've done really well and really it wasn't as effective as possible. That's the problem with Robots of Broadsword, when you have all this history and lore and all that, because we do know about the qualifiers. It's been verified by, I think, the Exterminator team as well. We know, you know, from other sources about some things, but it's like, was it really that effective? Like, it just was weird. I don't know. I'm going to put it with the D tiers because it is an unknown entity. And to be fair, it is a unique robot. Up next is Bulldog Breed. Now, Bulldog Breed has always been pretty impressive over the years. Like Series 4, it was, it's, Series 3, it was pretty crap. It got knocked out by RoboPig. But Series 4, we saw, starting to get better. It wasn't brilliant. It's a flappy little flipper that doesn't seem to be the most strong. But at least it was okay. Series 5, getting better. Unfortunately, it met Hypno-Disc. Series 6, again, it looks like it was really good. And again, unfortunately, met Hypno-Disc. But then Extreme 2 comes along, and we see what Barber-Ous is really capable of. And this is brilliant stuff. Now, I will say this. I'm not a fan of the way Barber-Ous changed its logo on the front. I really do prefer the big grey bulldog, with the weights. I do prefer that as the artwork. It's just such a unique one, whereas this is just kind of generic. It's just a bulldog's face on it with the, Union Jack in the background. Regardless, this is a very powerful robot. Very powerful robot. We see just how powerful it is in Extreme 2. It basically wins the tag team on its own, because Robo Chicken does practically nothing, unfortunately. But yeah, this is just a really good robot. And, obviously, spoiler alert for Series 7, I meant. But it's going to get better. It's going to get so much better. Alrighty then. Up next is Buzzant. Buzzant. Now, what's interesting with Buzzant is that there is quite a bit of history. If you know about the Ant Week World Series, Buzzant was not the worst robot in the world. It actually was quite effective. It didn't win much, mind. Just saying. Well, I'm saying it was effective. It doesn't mean it's brilliant. I love the design of it. It's an axle bot with a little saw on the front. It didn't do very well in the competition itself. Now, to be fair, it has a great design. And it isn't, the worst thing in the world. But obviously, you have to also keep in mind the stuff outside of it. And in the World Series, we know that this thing got to the semi-finals. So we know that it can work and it can be effective in certain circumstances. But at the same time, this is Robot Wars, and it didn't do very well in this big grand melee. It's awkward. Because I don't think Buzzant is awful. I think it's a good robot. But at the same time, it just didn't do brilliantly. And yeah, I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's going to be up there with the rest of the B tiers where it's it's good, but it's not, it didn't do brilliantly. So it's, it's a little bit iffy. All right, so up next is Cedric Slammer. Probably the most, the undercar, what's the word I'm looking for? I forgot what the word is. But he was the one that a lot of people had no real faith in. He was the one that a lot of people were like, okay, well, we saw it in Series 6. It died almost straight away. And then it managed to get to the grand final of the New Blood. This is a robot which sort of proves that, what happens in one series doesn't always mean that it's going to happen another way. And that is what makes this robot so good, because it is just a really, really good, robot. It's a bit of an ugly duckling, mind you, but it's a brilliant one. The way it tears apart its competition. Now, obviously, one could also argue that this is a robot which had some easy competition. One could argue, well, if you look at the robots it fought, maybe, just maybe, it isn't the greatest, But at the same time, I can't help but just fall in love with this thing. It's just really, really good. It's shocking just how good a robot can be in the right set of circumstances. Now, it's not S tier, but I do think that it deserves to be up there in A tier. I think it is very, very good robot. And I think when you see how good it is in Extreme 2, there's a reason why a lot of people consider it to be one of the more underrated, but also one of the best, underrated robots. Now, Cerberus. Cerberus has returned to us, and unfortunately, Cerberus, this is its final appearance. It is not a good final appearance at all. I really, 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 really hate the fact that Cerberus just returns just to die, essentially. It's a shame. Cerberus went from this beautiful sort of golden robot in Series 3, this shiny robot in Series 3, and then in Series 4 they got rid of that shine and it lost its head and it just wasn't very effective at all. Come Extreme 1, because of course it failed to qualify for Series 5 and 6, it's kind of forgettable. It's got its head back, but it's just, yeah. And then come, Extreme 2, it's silver now, I guess. But again, like, Cerberus is one of those unfortunate robots that I feel like had it had gotten better over the years, had it, had better results, better, things, it probably would have been a more mainstay robot. And, I do argue that this is one of those robots that is, dare I say, D-tier all-star, where a lot of people know of Cerberus. It is a very famous face, but also it's not, as beloved as some of the ones above it. And it's a shame, really. I think it's a great design still, but effectiveness is just zero at this point, and it's a shame. I do like Cerberus, and I wish there was more to it. Speaking of shame, Chaos 2. Boy, Chaos 2. This is the one which I struggled with the most when it came to looking at this tier list and thinking, where am I going to put these robots? Like, Chaos 2. Man, Chaos 2. What a fall from grace, In Series 3 and 4, it was top star, it was stellar. Series 5, still really good. Series 6, one could argue it's circumstantial that it lost in the heat final to Dan Tomkier. Had it faced a different set of robots, maybe it would have done better. But then comes Extreme 2. And it loses in the first round of the All-Stars, and it is just completely overwhelmed and obliterated, and it is just a depressing, goodbye to this fantastic robot. It's just depressing, really. Chaos 2 in Extreme 2 does get a flip in on Razor, to give credit where credit due, but it gets hit by 13 Black. Razor goes in from behind and crushes it, and it's just a brutal, torturous end, and then Mr. Psycho picks it up and just, yeah. It's a shame, really, that Chaos 2 falls from grace. And I think one of the main reasons which a lot of people always talk about is Chaos 2 is a robot that never tried to improve its design. You look at it in Series... Series 4 and 3, it's more or less the same robot. Series 5, it's the same robot. Extreme 1, same robot. Series 6, it's got new tires this time. Same robot. Extreme 2, it is the same robot. And it's one of those things where it's like, Chaos 2 should be S tier. It should still be S tier. It is one of the best robots, one of the greatest robots ever. And yet, when you look at its performance and you look at what happened with it, you can't bring it to that level. It's depressing. I want Chaos to be in S tier. I really do, but I can't bring myself to bring it to S tier because Extreme 2 shows us what happens when you don't improve. And in B tier, it's still a great robot. It's still a gorgeous looking robot, but yeah, that performance is all you really need to know. All right, so up next is Chip. Now, Chip does return in Series 7. And Chip in Series 7 is quite a good-looking robot. Chip in Extreme 2, I should say, whilst technically a better robot than Series 7 one, I'm not really a fan of its design. I think its design is a little bit too... I just think the colours look off, the blue and the white. I'm not really a fan of the colour scheme, personally. That said, if you look at its design, it actually reminds me of a Extreme Destruction robot called Spanners. In Extreme Destruction, there's a robot called Spanners, which looked exactly like this. It actually looks like a robot you build in Extreme Destruction or Arenas of Destruction. It looks like something you build from the video games, which is quite funny to think about. Now, how do I put it? This robot, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's still a very good robot. But at the same time, that color scheme, it's just awful. I think it deserves to be higher, but I'm still putting it in like B tier. Let's put it above you. I'm still going to put it in B tier because I think it's still a good robot. Very good robot for that matter. But at the same time, yeah, the color scheme is not the greatest. Chomplot is next. Now, Chomplot, there are some improvements from the Series 6 version. I believe the jaw is much more thicker in this iteration, and obviously the sides have flames instead of just being blank grey silver sides. Chomplot looks great. In terms of effectiveness, Chomplot was pretty effective. Now, it wasn't perfect. Again, it did have assistance from a certain house robot called Shunt, but it's still capable of grabbing a robot and just crushing it and dragging it all over the place. It's still a pretty effective robot. And who doesn't love Chomplot? Chomplot is one of those robots you can't help but love. Design-wise, it's brilliant. The effectiveness is pretty well done. And, maybe if it was in a better heat in Series 6, it could have progressed. That's the thing. You got to remember, these robots could have progressed had they had been given a better heat, so to speak. This is going into A tier. It's not going to go higher than S tier. Or higher than A tier, I should say, because it's not S tier worthy, but it is still gorgeous. Chopper is next. Now, Chopper. Chopper, I don't think its weapon worked once in its fights. Instead, it just used brute force and ignorance and just smashed itself all over the fucking arena and into the opponents. And it's such a wild, crazy, insane, just all over the place robot. It is hilarious to look at. But at the same time, what the hell? It's a robot which I just don't know how to rank, because it doesn't really work like you're meant to work. Like, I think the idea is it's meant to spin up and hit into robots. Instead, it just charged at 1,000,000 miles per hour into robots and just smashed them into pieces. And yeah, this is a robot that exists, and it's not bad, I guess. I'm going to put it in B tier. Again, being on the safe side would be... Yeah, it's a robot that I think if it was less insane, I think it probably could have done well. The whole Mauler-esque spinner. But at the same time, does that spinner look effective to you? Anyways, next is, which is this? Chroma, I think it is. Chroma, this is Team Mad's robot. Now, Team Mad, we know, enters with Apollo, which is just a recolor of Chronic, the Wedgehog. Chroma is a weird-looking robot. Now, obviously, this thing appears in the World Series. Now, I believe Chroma does win a championship in the World Series, but it had a different design. It was like a bigger flipper. It was more effective, dare I say. It was either that or Hades. It was one of the two. Or maybe both, in fact. But Chroma here, I don't know what to say. Its design is unusual, to say the very least. Like, you look at it, that flipper looks like it's completely fucking useless. It's got gigantic wheels, so it could do wheelies and what have you. And in terms of the combat, I believe this thing just got pitted, like, immediately. Like, and the pit was open and they just shoved it in, so it didn't really do much. I don't know what to put it. I'm going to say it's a D tier robot, just because obviously it does get a better design later down the line.
it's going to be a high D tier mind. It's not going to be as low as the O2, but it's a weird one. It's a weird one. All right, so up next is Combat Ant. Combat Ant returns. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have that really cool skull design on the front, which is a real shame. It's got a smiley face instead. That sucks. It's still pretty deadly. It's still pretty effective. It's not as great as it was in Extreme 1. Extreme 1 definitely had a lot more going for it, but I still think it's a great robot. I still think it's a wonderful robot. I just think, the artwork was better before. I'm going to put this in A tier still. It's a good robot. It's still very good. But, yeah. All right, so up next is Corkscrew. Corkscrew, what did you do to the paint job? What did you do with its design? Like, Corkscrew had this gorgeous design before, where it had this, fangy, teeth on it. It had, the Scottish flag on the back. It looked really good. They just replaced it with this garish-looking blue with red text saying Corkscrew 2 across it. How do you butcher a design like that? How? Well, you had something before. You had something that had creativity and character. And now you just have, probably one of the worst designs I think I've seen. And it's a shame, because in terms of effectiveness, this thing is really effective. It's a really effective robot. The spinner is deadly. Control-wise, not brilliant, but you get the picture. He was able to tear off Matilda's face. And then, you know what? You know where it's going to go. Poor design, by far. I refuse to put it higher than that, because it ruined this gorgeous looking design in Series 6 for that. It makes me quite angry. But it's going to get worse in Series 7. Crustacean is next. Now, Crustacean, I believe, is the one that defeated Corkscrew. There's not really much else to say about Crustacean. We already know about Crustacean. We already know how brilliant the design is, how effective it is. It's really good, gorgeous looking robot. One of the most creative looking robots out there. It's just going to go straight into A tier, because you know why. It's great. Might even put it into S tier. No, I'm going to keep it in A. All right, so up next is Cutlet. Now, Cutlet is a weird looking robot. It's like, I've seen the other featherweight Cutlet with the flipper. That one wasn't so bad, but this one I just don't really remember much of. I just remember it being able to push robots and get pitted itself. It's by the team who did Slamsy. And yeah, I'm not overly keen on its design. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's not brilliant. It's kind of middle of the road. Again, very middling robot. Not much to say. CV, Cataclysmic Variobot. Fought in the what is it called? The University Challenge. Fought in the University Challenge. Now this thing, I love the purple. I love the silver tattoos on it. I think it looks great in that respect. But at the same time, its axe wasn't too bad either. I think with this robot, it's kind of okay. That's the thing. It's an okay robot. There's not much to write home about. It's not fantastic. It's not the greatest. It's not bad either. It's borderline C and B. And in that case, this is a tough one. This is very tough. I am going to put it into B tier, because I think in terms of design and effectiveness, it was pretty good. But yeah. Dan Tomkier is next. Now, Dan Tomkier. Still a pretty kick-ass robot. They've gotten more confident now, and you see that in its battles. Now, sure, in the All-Stars it lost in round 2, but then again it lost to Firestorm, and it was a very good fight nonetheless. Then in the Challenge Belt, my God, is it a monster. It was so close to getting to that final, had it not faced Terahertz. Dantomkia, gorgeous looking robot. I love the black and the yellow, and it's a unique design, powerful flipper, really aggressive, really good. Like, genuinely love Dantomkia. Dietor is next. Now, Dietor is... The Extreme 2 Dietor is very interesting because this is probably what Dietor would have looked like in Series 6. Now, the Dietor team technically retired Dietor by this point. They didn't like the fact that, the cost of travel between, Ireland and England had increased, and of course it meant that, having to stop by security all the time and having to smash your robot, it was just a pain in the ass. So the Dietor team, they didn't return for Series 6, which of course was very upsetting for a lot of people. They returned in Extreme 2 though, and this is, arguably the Series 6 Dietor. Very much different to what we saw in Series 5 in the sense that the flipper is a lot more, longer. And it's got a crushing arm on the back as well. Dietor here is interesting to look at because it makes you wonder what it would have done in Series 6, and I don't think it would have done well. If Extreme 2 was anything to go by. It was quite ponderous, and the flipper I don't think was very effective at all. Like, the flipper seemed to be like a wooden plank on the end of it. It's funny because when you look at Dietor on display these days, this version of Dietor is the one that's always on display. It's the Extreme 2 version, with the smaller flipper and the crusher on the back. Obviously Dietor fights with Iron Orb just covered up, but still Dietor on display purposes is this one. And it's weird because if you were to make this a powerful flipper, then Dietor would have been really good looking, but because it's Dietor, it has that spring flipper, and the crusher I don't think was very effective at all. It's a weird mohawk almost. It's a very weird looking Dietor, really, because everything feels so much smaller. But at the same time, it's not a bad looking Dietor. I think it's a very good design. It's not as wonderful as it was in Series 5, or, the brilliance that is the Series 3 version, which is genuinely a very good robot. And the Series 4 version, it looked great in all the pictures and what have you. It just, unfortunately, didn't do very well in the competition. I think Dietor is going to be going the great design but ineffective category, mainly because it is a very gorgeous looking robot still. I still think it's a great design. I think it's quite a unique design, even if it's weird when you look at it compared to the other Dietors, but I like it. I like it a lot. All right, Direct Action is next. Direct Action, I love the look of it. I love the checkerboard look of it. Very good looking robot. In terms of effectiveness, it didn't seem that bad, honestly. It didn't look like it was a well-controlled robot mind. I don't think, if it fought in a four-way melee, it probably would be one of the ones that would be eliminated. Still, I like Direct Action. I really do. But it's one of those robots where it's like, what it could have been versus what it is. I'm going to put it into C, because whilst I like its design, I think in terms of effectiveness, it's kind of middling at best. It's not awful, but yeah. And here's Dr. Fist, and I think you already know where Dr. Fist is going. Do I really need to explain why Dr. Fist is an F tier? It's had all these opportunities to prove itself, and it did nothing. It is slow, it is ineffective, its weapon, it points the wrong fucking way. It is a disaster of a robot. Awful, awful robot. In every conceivable way. One of the worst, if not the worst robot to have appeared in the UK series. Anyways, Dominator. Dominator still has that silver look. I've said before, I prefer Dominator to be the gold with the flames. I think that is a much better look for Dominator. The silver look ruins it completely. But Dominator in Extreme 2 was not as brilliant as it used to be. Now, the reason why I say that is not because of cruelty or anything, but because you look at Dominator in the past, it was aggressive. It was always using it as hammering away at opponents. Dominator here essentially just doesn't do that. It just does nothing. And what you end up getting is a Dominator that just sucked, kinda. And, in the opening melee, it was attacking a dead Hypno-Disc because Born Again had technically already done the deed. And then in the second fight, it just got hit once and it just cowered. It's depressing to look at Dominator in this time because it was in Series 5, it had its problems, massive problems. And of course, I think that's why they were a lot more tentative in Series 6/Extreme 2, because it was like, well, we don't really want to suffer a similar fate. Still, Dominator is a nice looking robot. And I think it's a tough one because it's like it did better than some of these other robots, but at the same time, it was very cowardly in Extreme 2. And, it ruined what was a gorgeous design in the past with this silver look. I'm going to have to scroll it up a bit, but hey ho. There you go. All right. So Doom 2 is next. Doom 2. Missed opportunity to call it Hell on Earth. But anyways, Doom 2. But it's spelt with the 2 as in, that's too much. Not 2 as in the number 2. It's, how do I describe this thing? It's a wooden wedge with flames only on the front bit. The rest of it is black. My God. You are really tempting me today. It's the highest F tier so far. Dragon is next. Dragon is a unique robot. Has a big vertical spinner, but it's in the middle of the robot. So robots, it wedges under robots and then slices them apart, presumably. I don't think its spinner ever worked. I think it was mostly used for pushing and then it got pitted itself. Dragon, it's a unique design, I'll give it that. It's a great design. Effectiveness, I don't know about that. Dragon, yeah, you're going to go there. Eddie Evolution. So, based on the highlight reel, Eddie Evolution had a tiny little circular saw blade. It had 2 large wheels, it was invertible. It got battered and bruised, and it was pushed near the pit. And it just was lingering on the pit for a long time before it got pitted. That's Eddie's whole adventure, and it was kept together with duct tape, it seems. My God. Eddie Evolution. Yeah. Brilliant robot. Absolutely brilliant robot in every conceivable way. Yeah. Edgehog, on the other hand, is an actual good robot. Edgehog is interesting because, you look at it in the other seasons, Series 6, Series 7, it just wasn't as effective. It was always bullied, it was always picked on. Series 7 in particular, it got ganged up on. It never really had a chance. In Series 6, it was kind of forgettable. Like, I don't even remember what it did in Series 6, come to think about it. Extreme 2, on the other hand, you see it do quite well. And that's quite interesting because it shows this robot could do well in certain circumstances. And if you would go even further, Series 8, Glitter Bomb, which is just a pink version of this robot, it didn't do very well. It got flipped over and died. So, I think with Edgehog, it is a robot that could do well in circumstances, but at the same time, it's a robot that, it isn't perfect. It isn't the worst thing ever, but it's kind of like, I think B tier, honestly. It's a very, yeah. Ellie's little pink bot is next. Now this thing, Now, this thing would arguably be straight to F tier at the bottom because it didn't move. But we have some behind the scenes context about this thing. Eddie's little pink bot is a robot that the creators had built with motors that were too heavy. And the motors meant that the wheels were not even touching the ground, meaning it couldn't move. But the creators of the robot, the team, I should say, they knew it was a shit robot and they thought it'd be funny just to have it in there anyway to just get destroyed. So that's why it has such a brutal death against with Growler, in particular. This is like Ellie Little Pink Bot's claim to fame as being the fight that really highlighted Growler the most. But I think it is a joke bot. Because based on what we know behind the scenes, this thing was clearly there just for a laugh. And we do know that the lightweights were meant to have more competitors. But for whatever reason, one pulled out, which meant that the other had to withdraw. The other one that had to withdraw was Rough Stuff, I believe. I don't know who was meant to be Rough Stuff's opponent, but apparently something happened which caused it to just, yeah. Anyways, Fatal Attraction is next, and my god, it's such a disturbing robot with what's on top of it. Oh, I hate that scene. I hate it. I've only seen the film once, and it's one of those films where, sure, it's not the most gory or horrific film in the world, but because of what happens to a particular cute little animal, no, I'm not watching it. Fuck it. I'm a pussy. Fatal Attraction. Now, this design, I think, is a really wonderful design. It's a unique design. 2 bludgeoners on both ends. It was pretty effective, honestly. And I dare say this robot should have gone into the Heat final. It aggravates me that it didn't. And you'll find out why, because there's a robot later on which I'm going to rant about because of how much it fucks me off. And unfortunately, Fatal Attraction was the victim of this particular robot. Fatal Attraction, I think, it's a fun robot, honestly. Like, I think, wait, no, have I got it wrong? Did Fatal Attraction fight Cedric Slammer? I think I got it wrong. Never mind. I'm thinking of a Piranha. I've got the 2 robots confused. I've forgotten my fights. I'm going to have to look this up in a minute. I'm going to have to look this up to verify. Who did Fatal Attraction fight? Did it fight Cedric Slammer or did it fight Pressure? Anyways, I love the look of this robot. Very good looking robot. Effectiveness is not 100% obviously, but it's still a pretty good robot. Surprisingly so as well, given what it looks like. I like it. I really do. It's with direct action, in my opinion, in the terms of, like, it's a great looking robot. It's not 100% there, but it is still great. And who knows, maybe in circumstances it would have been great. Or better, I should say. Firestorm is next. Now, Firestorm, I'm surprised was not in the Iron Maidens. Think about it. Like, Firestorm would have been perfect for the Iron Maiden, but I think because of how well it did in, the All-Stars and the Commonwealth, I think, yeah, you can see why Firestorm probably was absent from that one. Firestorm, I love the strip on the bottom of it. I think everyone always says, the strip makes it look 10 times better. It does. It is 10 times better with that strip as well. The steel strip. I think this is a great Firestorm, really. Like, it's a massive improvement for what came before it, in the sense that this one is entertaining. It's fast. It's aggressive. It's really good at its job. Yeah, I think Firestorm just is an easy S tier, really. I'm going to put it right at the top, honestly, because it really is just a gorgeous looking Firestorm, this one. And it's going to get even better with Series 7, where you have probably the best looking Firestorm. Spoiler alert. Fluffy is next. Now, Fluffy didn't do much in Extreme 2. You can clearly tell sometimes in certain competitions that they want certain robots to do really well and win the competition. And Fluffy is one of those robots. Like, you can clearly tell that they wanted Fluffy to win the University Challenge, because it's such an obvious thing. Like, of course, Fluffy, with its powerful, spinning bar, would just smash up other opponents and win the competition easily. But then you have to remind yourself this is Fluffy, and Fluffy is unreliable. it's a shame, really, because Fluffy isn't awful by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, like, again, it's going to go in C tier because it is one of those robots where you can see the potential, but it is just painfully in the middle. It's just painfully in the middle all the time, and it's just getting to a point where it's like getting boring. You know, it's like you went from this brilliant robot to a robot that is now getting boring every time we see it because it's just doing the same thing over and over again. It damages a robot, then it dies. Flybot is next. Flybot. I don't actually remember much from this one. I remember it got pitted. It was like pushed along with a bunch of other robots into the pit, and that was about it. It's quite a funny design, really. You know, I quite like it in that charming sort of look. It wasn't that bad, actually. You know, it kind of worked to an extent, you know, based on what we saw. But yeah, it's a weird robot. You know, do I consider this to be a good robot? Do I consider it to be bad? Not really, you know. It's middling, very middling. It's one of those robots that it's middling. I quite like the design in a way, you know, for a featherweight. It's kind of like, it's kind of charming. I'm going to put it in C. Gianto. Now, Gianto is technically an antweight that's inside a featherweight arena. So, for context, Gianto should have been this pink, fluffy robot, which was basically just, what's it called? TX-108, but without the claw. For whatever reason, they had a problem with Gianto, which caused it to basically not work. And so Gianto was replaced by a very basic outweight sumo bot. And so that's why you saw this tiny little thing in the main arena, and it got crushed and destroyed. So technically speaking, we're not seeing the real Gianto here. You know, so technically, we're not judging the true Gianto, but unfortunately it is still pretty middling. It's still pretty bad, and yeah, I'm going to put it in D tier only because the sumo bot, if you look at it, it actually looks pretty nice. That's the only reason why, and plus technically we're not seeing the real one, so I'm going to be a little bit fair. Gladiator is next. Now Gladiator, again, Team Mad, and I don't like its design at all. It's too bulky. It's too awkward and cumbersome of a robot. You know, it wasn't dreadful, I guess. You know, it did stuff. But at the same time, do you really care about it? Like, you know, yeah, it's one of those robots where it's like, is it good? Is it actually good? Or is it just a robot that just seems rather, I don't know, generic, boring, bulky, every other bad word you can think of. I'm kind of like mixed on this thing, because it did technically get to the final, and it did seem like it could do decently in fights, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of its design. So I'm actually going to put it in the poor design but effective category, because it was effective, I guess, to an extent. But design-wise, yeah, not so much. All right, so next up is Hades. Now, Hades, again, I don't know whether it was this one or Chrome, or maybe both, that won the World Championship in Outweight World Series. However, this version did not. Hades is weird because it's not technically a flipper. It essentially flips its whole body over to flip opponents or push them, which is quite unique, I guess, in a way. But yeah, it's a unusual one, very unusual one. I don't know what to say about this machine. It is quite good looking, I will say. It's better looking than Chroma. But I don't know whether it's effective. That's the thing. I don't know whether it's effective. I'll put it in the great design but ineffective category. Hell's Teeth is next. Now, Hell's Teeth, I love the fact that it looks like a tooth almost. So like a fang with, fire all over it. It's got a circular saw. It's quite an effective pusher. And, I guess in a way, it's, it's quite an effective robot, but it's not perfect. It's kind of like, this is the problem with a lot of these robots. They're very much middling, Hell's Teeth, I think, is decent, but also not perfect. Like, I'm going to put it in C tier. Again, it's a C tier robot, and judging by the fact that I can't seem to do much, yeah, I'm going to have to pause this recording and then go and restart it again. Okay then, so Hydra is next. Now Hydra, we saw how good it was in Series 6, and unfortunately Series 2 of Extreme, it's kind of screwed over because of circumstances. It's a shame because I think it is a good robot. I think it's a very good robot. I mean, Series 7 is going to be even worse, which is a real shame. Yeah, like Hydra, great robot, honestly. It's just again, circumstances cause it to be kind of screwed over, I feel. So I'm going to put it into B because I do know it's good. Speaking of robots that are screwed over, or should I dare say, didn't really improve over the years, Hypno-Disc. Hypno-Disc in Series 3 was legendary. Obviously, comparing it to later versions, it was very weak. Series 4, on the other hand, Hypno-Disc was an absolute brutal machine. It was scary. It was frightening. It was brilliant. Then Series 6 comes along, and Series 5, I should say, and Hypno-Disc's still pretty good, but it's not as powerful as it used to be. Robots are getting more better, and they're more powerful. And then comes Extreme 2, where it gets humiliated twice. In the All-Stars, it gets like a few bashes in, then gets flipped and then knocked out. In the Challenge Belt, it literally gets one hit on the back end, I believe, of S.M.I.D.S.Y and or Dan Tomke, and then Dan Tomke just throws it out of the arena. Spectacular, sure, but depressing, to say the very least. It's still a gorgeous design. Like, it's there with Chaos 2 in the sense that both robots didn't improve, and as a result, they got screwed over because they needed those improvements. They needed to, repair and fix themselves to be better than they were. It's a depressing sight to behold, really. But anyways, ICU is next. The Exterminator sister, or Exterminator's younger sister, I guess you could call it. This thing, I love the design of ICU, and I'm glad that it did well here, because we can see that ICU isn't a bad robot. It is speedy, it's got an effective axe, it's quite an aggressive robot, and design-wise, brilliant thing. I like ICU a lot. Now, ICU does lose in a rather unfortunate way in the heat final of its New Blood, where it got hit once by Storm 2 and its aerial fell off. Literally, that's how it got killed. Shame too, because I think this is a fantastic robot. Really good looking robot, really gorgeous. It's just a shame that it just didn't really work as well. And I think with ICU, it deserves to be up there with the other weirdos of A tier. Like, A tier is very weird, because it is a very good robot. And who knows, maybe in a different heat it would have done better. Who knows? Infernal Contraption is up next. Now, I love Infernal Contraption. I've always been quite soft to this robot. It's a silly robot. It's a goofy robot. And I think what makes it even funnier, especially here, is the fact that I see Infernal Contraption. The fact that Infernal Contraption actually manages to knock out Sergeant Bash in its fight. So for those who don't know, if you watch the battle between it and Infinity, I believe, pushes Infernal Contraption into Sergeant Bash, and Infernal Contraption's blade hits Sergeant Bash and knocks out the link. So, yeah, Infernal Contraption technically killed a house robot. If that isn't impressive, I don't know what is. I am a sucker when it comes to Infernal Contraption. I think the design is great. You know, and we can see that it could do well in certain circumstances. It's just a shame that we never really did. But anyways, I'm going to put it up there. B tier. I'm going to put it right there. Infinity is next. Infinity. It may not be a pretty robot. It is quite a bare bones looking robot, but my God, is this an effective robot? Like, it surprised everyone with how effective it was. It makes you wonder, like, how good it would have been in other championships. You know, who knows? Maybe it would have been better if it had better circumstances. You know, I think Infinity is really good. I genuinely do. I'm gonna put it though in the poor design but effective category, because at the end of the day, its design is still bad. It's pretty bad, you know. Anyways, up next is Iron Ore. 2.5 or 2.1, or just 2, I think at this point. Iron Ore. It is a good robot. Like, Iron Ore is genuinely a good robot. It's just a case of it's not, you know, it's just, I don't know how to put it. Like, it's really circumstantial. Like, if it's up against a big, powerful flipper, it's going to lose. If it's up against a big, powerful axe, it's going to lose. If it's up against a big, powerful, you know, spinner or anything, it's going to lose. But at the same time, it's really good at what it does. It can, you know, face off against opponents quite well. And it's quite durable, but it's not perfect. And that's my issue with Iron Ore. It's not perfect. And I'm going to put it right there in B tier, because I think to myself, Iron Ore isn't bad, but it isn't great. Can Opener is next. Now, Can Opener surprised everyone with its win in the Annihilator, because Can Opener has never won in the championship. It has always lost in the first round. But then it comes through the Annihilator, suddenly it knows how to win. Suddenly it knows how to crush and destroy and just survive even like powerful spinners. And there's one moment in Extreme 2 that Can Opener has that I think is a gold star moment, and that is when it manages to hook its claw right into Typhoon. And by doing so, it manages to just disable Typhoon 2 in one foul swoop. It makes you wonder what would have happened if it was up against Typhoon in the main championship. Think about it. If it was up against Typhoon in the main championship and it did something similar, imagine just hooking that claw in and killing it. Boy, would history be different. Anyways, Can Opener. I'm actually going to put Can Opener in the S tier, because we do know for a fact that Can Opener is a good robot, if my mouse will work. You know, it's... And this was proof that it was very good, very powerful. Just a really, really good robot. And a very gorgeous looking robot too. I really love the look of it. Cat 3 is next. Cat 3, you know, it's not awful. It was heavily advertised for Extreme 2, even though it only appears, I believe, in one competition. Cat 3, it's in the Iron Maiden, and despite being heavily advertised in or for Extreme 2, Cat 3, in terms of performance, it's pretty middling. Like, it didn't do awful in the first round, but then in the second round, it just got torn apart by Pussycat, and sure, it survived. But yeah, like, Cat 3, it's still not up there for me in terms of the greats. Still a good robot, but I like it still. You know, I think it's deserving of a B tier. You know, I'll give it that much. Anyways, Catnip is next. I love the look of Catnip. Catnip, wonderful design. I believe Catnip is the one that lost its wheel. Because I'm trying to think, does Kitty or Catnip lose in the first round? Either way, both of them are really good robots. Great design. Really good looking robot. I love the look of Catnip. This is brilliant. Effectiveness, though, I don't think those claws are going to get on anything. I'm just going to be honest. But I still like it. I think it's a really good looking robot. Killer Carrot is next. Killer Carrot, it's improved from the Series 6 version, in the sense that the flipper is actually a proper flipper where it goes onto the ground and scrapes and flips it. But, as opposed to that big bulky thing that seemed to struggle to flip anything, it's a much more improved Killer Carrot. But at the same time, it is Killer Carrot, and it is still kind of generic looking. It's kind of there. Not perfect, but it's not awful. Again, C tier. Kitty is up next. Kitty is great. I think Kitty is brilliant. The design is top notch. It's a smaller version of Pussycat. What else can I say? It didn't do brilliantly as a featherweight, which is a real shame because I think it is a fantastic robot. But like with some other robots, I think this deserves to be in a high tier because I think A tier is really where it deserves to be because it is a really good robot. Like, it looks great. I feel like if it was up again, if it didn't just keep falling into the pit, it would have been even better. It's a shame, really. Lamsey is next. Lamsey hasn't really improved from Series 5. I believe it has a saw blade, though. Or at least it did in Series 6 qualifiers. It's got a checkerboard look now. I just don't know what to say. It's just kind of generic, honestly. It's like, it's surprisingly effective despite its poor design, which I think says all you need to know, doesn't it? It managed to get to the final. I like the artwork, I will say that, but effectiveness, not so great. Lightning is next. Lightning looks great. Lightning genuinely looks beautiful. It's a fantastic looking robot. I'm baffled that this thing never qualified for Series 5 or 6 when it looks this gorgeous. Like, this is a robot that you want to see. Sure, it might not win a fight, it might not do well, but it looks great, it looks the part, and that, for me, is all you really need to know. I think Lightning is great. Really good, gorgeous robot. Like, it's up there with Kitty in the sense that, yeah, it didn't do brilliantly, but come on. It's okay. It's good. Okay, so in case you're curious, the audio for the second half of the video it managed to corrupt. So what you're listening to is me basically doing commentary over the surviving part of the video, which is basically the whole thing. It's going to be over 58 minutes long of me just rambling about all the other robots. But unfortunately, the original audio, for whatever reason, it corrupted and I couldn't use it. So basically where we left off was Loa. Loa is a great robot. It is a robot which is very patchy. It won a AWS championship, which, goes to show how really good this robot is. For me personally, I think it's a very, very nice robot. I think Crushers in general just look really good. But yeah, Loa was a really good robot, and I'm just curious how long it's going to take for me to just drop Loa off onto the position. There he is. He's now going into A position, mainly because he is a good robot, really nice looking robot, really effective robot. Wish we saw more of it. Same with many of the other animates, to be fair. Mad Dog was next. Mad Dog, now for me personally, I actually quite like the look of Mad Dog. I think the artwork and the design looks very cool. I think the flipper also looks like it could have been quite effective. Unfortunately, Mad Dog just didn't do very well in the actual competition. I believe it lost in round 1. It wasn't very effective. It was sort of like a sitting dead duck. All it took was like one big hit against the side and it was immediately immobilized. So reliability-wise, this thing was not very good at all. So yeah, I believe I put this in the great design, but ineffective category. See if I do so. I do so now. I've placed it just above Hades or just below Hades. Now I've placed it just above Cerberus, never mind. God, this is so awkward. Anyways, Major Tom. Major Tom, I've always loved Major Tom. This is the last time we ever see its bumper car appearance because, well, it just got completely destroyed, didn't it? Major Tom, surprisingly durable in Extreme 2. You see how durable this thing is. It's able to take heavy blows. It's able to have its head knocked off by Mr. Psycho's hammer. It's, it gets flipped about. It just survives everything. It managed to make it to the top 3 in the Annihilator. Ultimately, in the Annihilator, it ended up just having one of the most brutal deaths imaginable, with Matilda just shredding the front end. I quite like the look of it. I've always liked the look of Major Tom. I think it's quite nice. I think the glossiness of the Union Jack also just looks really pleasant to look at. And, of course, it goes into C tier because it is actually quite a good robot. It's not just, a robot that's kind of lame. Next up is Malk 1.2. It's literally just a silver box with quite literal nails for spikes on the front and 2 large wheels. It is the most generic looking robot you can imagine. Like, if you think of a very generic looking robot, that right there, Malk, however you meant to pronounce it, that thing is indeed just generic. And I'm surprised I managed to rattle on so much on these. But it went into F tier because just look at it. It's just so pathetic. It is so pathetic. It's just such a basic bitch robot in every conceivable way. Mammoth is next. And Mammoth, this is my personal favourite version of Mammoth, mainly because it looks really good. The design of it is just really well done. It actually looks sort of like a mammoth if you think about it, with the brown arches. Maybe not. The mammoth machines never looked like mammoths. The first mammoth was probably the closest, and even then it wasn't mammothy. But regardless, it's definitely the best looking mammoth. The lawnmower blade, the brown arches, the eyes on the front, it just goes into great design. It's not effective at all. It is very slow, but it is quite cool. Maximus is quite interesting because I remember discovering the website a while back. Back in, I think, 2016 or 17, I was just looking up robots, because I hadn't, on the occasion you'd find like new images of robots and their websites, and I think I looked up Destructible. And when I looked up Destructible, there was suddenly this high quality image of Destructible, and it was like, we've got this like really low quality, like someone's taken a picture of a magazine, and it's just like the saturation, the brightness is like 100% almost. And it turns out it was a Maximus website, and the Maximus website had all this stuff, all these high quality images, all this stuff about the qualifiers. Apparently Maximus fought Dan Tom Kier, Destructible, and Iron Ore. Now, Iron Ore was flipped onto its back, if I recall, and maybe flipped out the arena, I don't really recall. Maximus was also flipped over, but Destructible survived the whole fight with Dan Tom Kier, and sadly Destructible never qualified, which is a real shame. But luckily Destructible is still alive and still fighting, or will be fighting, in Gloucester, which is quite an amusing thing to think about, because of course it's such an old robot. Anyways, Maximus, it's got a nice looking artwork. That's the best I can say. It was very slow. The flipper is very weird. Like, it's almost like it doesn't work properly. Like, it just seems to just be like get stuck, and it doesn't seem to flip anything. It's got that saw blade in the middle, which I think is probably what's causing the issues. And it managed to win one fight, but only because it was outlasting the other robot, which isn't really a impressive victory. It's not like, as I mentioned just now, the qualifier where Destructible was flipped about by Dan Tomke and still survived, rolling over multiple times. Maximus is just kind of dull, and it goes into D tier because it's only saved because of its nice looking design, like artwork I should say, but that's about it. Everything else is kind of lame. It's a really lame robot. Mega Morg is next, or Mini Morg. I believe this is just a great robot. So it's an improved version of the Series 5 one, which had that really weird, like, it was a really awkward flipper, or lifter, however you want to call it. Mini Morg is still pretty decent. It didn't do too badly in its return. Obviously, it does much better in Series 7, even if it is only in 2 fights. But still, you can see the improvements being made, and I appreciate that a lot. And of course, Mini Morg is one of those like C, D lit tier all-stars, a robot that's really well known. And of course, you can't help but love it. It's just such a wonderful design. And again, they've improved over the years, so they deserve some recognition for that. And of course, I've put it in B tier because, of course, I do. It's a very good robot. Mesmer is interesting because Mesmer, or Mesmer 2, in AWS, it actually wasn't such a bad robot. It could actually do quite well. It managed to get to semi-finals, I believe. But of course, what we see in the actual competition in Wars, it gets flipped on its side and it loses all power, all control, and it just does nothing for the whole fight except spin around aimlessly. I quite like the design. It's like a mini S3 almost. It's just, it is such a simple but great design in my opinion, and I just really, really like it. It's a shame we never saw more of it. That's the thing. And because of the pedigree of how good it was, it does go into C tier because it could do well, although looks like I've moved it down to great design. I think that's the thing. It's borderline on both because it's like, yeah, it has that potential. But of course Micromute is next. Now, Micromute, the design is great. I will give it that. But Micromute and, speed as well. But Micromute is one of those robots that just doesn't really seem to be well controlled at all. Like, if you watch any of its fights, it is just zipping about like mad, hitting anything they can see, and then occasionally it just kills itself in some form or fashion. Are we really that surprised that this Sir Kill-a-Lot, grabbed it and shredded its back against Matilda's flywheel? No, we're not, because in a way, this thing is just, it would have killed itself in some unimaginable way anyway. It goes in C tier because it is a good design and it does have potential, but obviously it was just uncontrollable mess. Mighty Mouse. You can't help but love Mighty Mouse. I love the design of it. I think it's great. I mean, it may not be the greatest robot in the world. It's very cowardly. It always runs away in its fights. But at the same time, I think the design is really well done. I think the design is really, good. And I think, if I recall, it was the better of the two mouse machines. So it's definitely going to go into C tier because we know that it is actually quite a good robot. Up next, Militant. Militant is, it's an exposed robot, but its design is really quite cool. And again, this is a robot which I believe was a champion in AWS. And of course, it was a pretty deadly robot. That spinner is very nasty. Like, imagine Combat Ant, but like that. So yeah, that's going into B tier because it is just a really good robot. It didn't do well though in the actual competition. Minimalistic is interesting because its design is probably one of those stock robots, or maybe just a random guy who made an outweight one day and didn't do any other competition. Sort of like Antigeddon. I really like the design of this thing. I think the design is quite unique. It's quite a funky design. It's not the greatest, sure, but it's quite a funky design. It wasn't the greatest robot in the world. I don't actually remember much of what it did. I think it just kind of got defeated and destroyed, and that was it. Still, it's okay. It's okay. It wasn't the worst. It's probably going in D tier because, of course, how... It's not... Yeah. All right, Mr. Nasty. Mr. Nasty, very powerful Rambot. Very nasty Rambot. Very basic looking Rambot, mind, because it's a very shiny robot, but it's just got a big spike at the front, and it's, despite it all, it's still pretty good. It's still a very powerful robot, and it did quite well in the New Blood, and I think there's that potential, but again, it is just a box on wheels, which I hate using that term, but look at it. It's a literal box with a spike. Mute is next. Now, Mute is a robot that I have infamously said in the past is one of my least favourite robots. I do not like Mute. I think Mute is a flea in the arena. It is a robot that just bounces all over the place and wins by sheer luck. And I'm not really a fan of that, personally. Mew, the flipper doesn't even make any sense. Like, it's a front hinge flipper. You go underneath robots and flip them. Well, the way the front hinge flipper on Mute works is that it's angled sharply upwards at the front. So already, robots going to be bouncing against the front rather than going up it. Then you've got the black strips with spikes, which are going to be blocking anything from going on top fully. And it just makes no logical sense. Like, even when you look at it in New Blood, it came runners up, but it came runners up through, iffy circumstances. Its first fight, it and Rhubarb had to help get rid of Terror Turtle. Then in the second round, it was struggling against Mr. Nasty. And then in the third round, it manages to get a flip on Rhubarb. Then comes the grand final, and it's not doing well, and it gets knocked out, alongside Cedric Slammer. And then it just doesn't really do well against Storm, too. Like, this is a robot that I think people hype up because, oh, wow, look how powerful those flips are. If it gets a flip, because its flipper is so poorly designed. I don't understand the flipper design on this thing. Like, you look at Firestorm, it is smooth. It is a smooth, angle. And, a smooth, acute angle. And it is easy for it to slip under a robot and flip them. With Mute, you don't get that. You don't get that at all. And I think it's too powerful for its own good. It's... For me personally, I would not rank Mute highly. However, obviously, I would have to rank it quite highly. And judging by the video feed, it seems like I was on a bit of a rant when it came to Mute. So I'm just going to wait and see where I actually positioned him. This is the really annoying part of having to... Oh, never mind, I'm doing it now. Okay, so I put it in B tier because... By technicality, yes, it is a good robot. But I don't like it. Anyways, Nasty Humphrey. Humphrey in Series 4, I actually quite liked its design. It had that little, like, gremlin alien thing in the front driving this, like, weird vehicle. And it was great. And then comes Nasty Humphrey, which is just very bare bones and basic. It's not as good, and it's got an axe, which doesn't seem to be that powerful. Now, don't get me wrong, it is quite a durable machine, Nasty Humphrey. Like, it was able to, sustain itself. It was able to withstand a lot of punishment before being knocked out. But it is very basic. It is a very basic-looking robot with a basic-looking axe. It didn't seem to be that powerful, but, again, give credit where credit due, it didn't do too awfully. So, it's definitely in a D tier position. It's a very high D tier. But yeah. Neoteric. Now, this is a good example of a robot which has a great design, but it's not that effective. And one of the reasons why it's not that effective is because it's a walker. And because it's a walker, it's going to be trudging along slowly. And it means that robots can just bash it over, or knock it over, flip it over, whatever. And it's easily taken out. Which is a real shame because I think it's got a nice design. It's got a massive flywheel and really nice, like, Ripper-esque, yellow and green coloration. I think, it's a great design, but effectiveness-wise, if it wasn't a walker, maybe it would have been better. Maybe if it had wheels. Great design, but ineffective. Okay, so the next up is the Knight Rider. They're both very similar looking robots, and they both... Oh, not similar looking robots, I meant similarly named robots. Again, how the fuck did the production think, oh yeah, let's have two robots that have virtually the same name? Anyways, the first one, I don't know which one this one is, Knight Raider maybe. I quite like the design. I like its skeletal look on the back. I like the flipper look. It didn't do anything, though. It was very piss poor. It's a real shame, because I think really this is a good robot. It's a good looking robot, but it was not effective whatsoever. And the other one, Knight Rider, it's a box on wheels with long spear. It doesn't have anything real special about it. Maybe in a different circumstance, different fight, it may have done better. Like maybe it could have been storming itself around the arena, smashing over all sorts of robots. But yeah, it's just wasn't there. It's kind of a basic looking robot, and it's a D. Panic Attack is next. Now, Panic Attack. No longer is it the gold Panic Attack seen in Series 6. It is, in fact, the Series 5 one revamped, so to speak. Panic Attack, it's really good. It's a gorgeous looking machine. The Series 5 one is really gorgeous. One of the best looking robots. And it is just a beautiful robot, beautifully designed, really effective. And you can see how effective it is. Unfortunately, it does face Firestorm in the second round, which is a shame. Because, you want to see more of it. It's going into S tier because it is just a legend of a robot. It is just fantastic. And you can't help but love Panic Attack. Personally, it is a great robot. It is deserving of an S tier, even if it is getting a little bit outdated now. Anyways, up next is Pants. Pants, I love the pink purple color scheme. It's a surprisingly quite effective robot, even to this day. It can still withstand and survive fights. It's one of the more smooth outweights, because a lot of the outweights are very they're very thrown together. They're very scrappy looking, but when you look at Pants, it's a very smooth, very formal looking outweight, and it's quite a nice looking one as well. And that's not to say, that's not to belittle any of the outweights, but obviously a lot of them are very much stuck together, and Pants isn't. Well, it probably is, but it looks like it isn't, if that makes sense. It looks very well designed. It's got a nice colour scheme too. Oh dear, I'm yawning a lot. And it's going into A tier because it is just this is what outweights should look like. Philippa. Now, the thing about Philippa is it's such a weird robot, because you look at it and you think it shouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it's a robot that doesn't look like it would win, and yet it does really well all the time. It's got a massive crusher this time, as well as the flipper. Philippa, I do kind of prefer the original designs, not going to lie. But still, I think Philippa is a great robot. It is a surprising robot, You wouldn't think that Dipoposaurus Rex from Series 3 would do as well as Philippa would, But here we are, Philippa. Great robot. It really is. It's one of the best foreign robots by far. Even if I prefer earlier versions without the crusher, because the crusher just looked a little bit too smacked on. But yeah, still a great robot. A tier for sure. All right, Piranha is next. Now, Piranha, I mentioned yesterday, I believe, when I did the initial recording, basically, that I confused the match between it and Pressure and Fatal Attraction. I believe Fatal Attraction fought Cedric Slammer, and Piranha was the one that faced Pressure, and Piranha kind of got screwed over by Pressure. It is a nice looking robot. It's got a nice looking axe blade. It actually functions quite well, Piranha. It's a very weird looking robot for what it's named after. You'd think it'd have like a fish look on it, but it doesn't. It's just a silver robot. It's just kind of a shame, but it's still very good robot. Very good robot. Goes into B tier because it is actually quite a well designed robot. Pressure. And this is the one I wanted to rant on about, because Pressure is a good example of a robot that looks really good. You look at the design, it's beautifully designed. It looks fantastic. And then you see it in battle, and it is completely and utterly useless in fights. One of the problems with Pressure, I find, is it's a good example of a robot that has obsessively tried to use a gimmick, and it wants to use that gimmick as its main point. And so it has all these different flippers all over the place, and as a result, it's just a mess of a robot. You see it in battles, it just sits there and it flaps its flippers about, doing nothing. Sometimes I think people need to understand that you don't need to have a gimmicky robot. You can make a robot that looks good, but also be quite simple. maybe just have the flipping scoop, maybe have, some self-rating arms, sure, to roll yourself back over, but not like entire panels flipping about all over the place and it doing nothing. That's the thing. This is a robot that does absolutely nothing, and it gets quite annoying to watch, especially when it wins a fight, because it's like it doesn't deserve to win. It's like it's just sat there doing nothing, and the other robot's doing everything, but it might get the one flip in, and suddenly it wins. But still, I think the design of it is really well designed. I like its design, but I hate it as a robot. It's the reason why it failed to qualify multiple times. Just saying. Pulverizer. Pulverizer is a gorgeous robot. It was kind of screwed over by who it faced in Extreme 2. It faced Razor, and of course it had no chance. Maybe it could have hit the wheels, who knows, but unfortunately I don't think that was going to happen. Pulverizer, great robot. It's a shame it didn't do better. It's a shame we don't see more of it in the UK series, because it doesn't really appear all that much. It appears twice. Both times it just loses. And it's a great robot. It's real shame as well. Great design, everything. It sucks. It's an A tier though. Pussycat, oh Pussycat. It's one of my favourite robots. In fact, it is my personal favourite robot. It is, innovative. It is, well controlled. It is destructive. It is everything you want in a robot. Its design is beautiful. This Pussycat is quite an underrated design. It's the black Pussycat. Now, previously Pussycat has always been either see-through, which, arguably was sort of blacky in Series 3, or it's been blue, and that blue artwork is beautiful. So to get rid of it and go to the black Pussycat, it is kind of a shame, but at the same time, it just looks so nice. Now, unfortunately, with Pussycat, the reason why they didn't appear in Series 6 is, of course, because of tragic circumstances surrounding Pussycat. Obviously, if you know, you know. But still, like, it makes you wonder what things would have been like if Pussycat didn't, if that didn't happen. Pussycat did appear in Series 6. Would it have done well? Would it have done poorly? Who knows? We've seen Extreme 2, it doesn't do well in the tag team. It gets flipped out of the arena almost immediately. But, it's quite impressive out of the arena, to be fair. But in the Iron Maiden, it's doing quite well. It's quite, formidable. You see how destructive it is, even still, with it slicing apart Cat 3. I think Pussycat is a great robot. Like, the design is wonderful. The design is great, and it is still, in my opinion, an S tier. It's beautiful. Genuinely one of the best. Raging Reality. Now, Raging Reality appeared in the Annihilator. I love the design. I said it before in the Series 6 ranking video. I love the design of it. It may look very blocky, but it's still great. It's, this is the Nightmare team improving over time, and I like that a lot. And I think, this is a step in the right direction. It's still a pretty good robot. It managed to flip Typhoon as it was spinning, which is great as well. So, yeah, no, it deserves an A tier for sure. All right, so up next is Robot. Robot appears twice, and it doesn't really have much changes. I believe in Series 7, though, it's more rectangular, whereas here it's a bit more bulky, and it's not the worst design in the world, but it's not a great robot. It doesn't work. It failed twice. It's not very great. It's a boring robot in a way. But is it the worst? Not really. It's still got an okayish design. Razor is next. Razor, I mean, how can you not have Razor up there? It is one of the greatest robots ever. Mark Thorpe himself said, this is what he envisions for Robot Wars. A robot that is a piece of art, but also a destructive and powerful and effective robot. Something that is a lost art with modern robotics. In the sense that everything has to look blocky and doesn't look pretty. Razor, in Extreme 2, it won the All-Stars, and it had a bit of a scare in the first round because it did get knocked out by 13 Black. But it managed to redeem itself in the final when it faced 13 Black and crushed it. It also did quite well in the European Championship, and one of the things I will mention, I do love the fact the Extreme 2 version of Razor has spiked wheels. The spiked wheels look so nice on Razor, and it's meant to prevent it from being flipped, apparently, but I don't know how effective that was. It's just a really beautiful robot. Like, there's nothing really wrong with Razor. And it's a shame this is the last appearance in the classic era, because I would have loved to have seen Razor in Series 7. Unfortunately, there was problems, as you know, in the European Championship. It, it gave its win to Tornado. And let's just say this caused a bit of strife with the team, which resulted in the team splitting up and Razor not appearing in Series 7. But still, it's number one for a reason. Revenge of Trouble and Strife it's not changed from Series 6. It's basically the same robot. It's still a pretty powerful robot, though. You still see this thing, and it can still batter you. It's got a decent flipper as well. It does better here than Series 6, to be fair, and the Annihilator. And, it's a unique design. I'll give it that. It's a unique design. It's not brilliant, but it's not bad. It's great in a way. But yeah, like, I don't know what else to say. It's only slightly different on the top, I guess. But even then, it was pretty much the same as it was in Series 6. Great robot. Had lots of potential. Lots of potential. Revolution 2. Now, Revolution 2 in Series 6 had very thin blades. And these thin blades meant that it would impale itself onto other robots and it would get stuck. Which is not a great thing. Because, if you want to fight, you don't want to get stuck in your robot and then, drive around with that robot stuck to you. So they made the blades thicker, and I think this is a massive improvement because I think Revolution is such a great design. The design is great, and with thicker blades, it actually manages to be better. As a result, it doesn't win, obviously. It does me face Storm 2, which is probably one of the worst robots to fight. But still, the thicker blades make it far better. Far, far better. And it goes into B tier again because the potential was there. He's a very good robot. And, it's just, really good. Rick. So Rick. Rick. I love Rick. I think Rick is a great robot. I love the fact it's still got that Maverick look on it. I love the see-through, bit on the tires. I love the little bludgeon on the back, the flipper. Rick isn't that bad of a robot either. It's not the worst robot in the world. It can flip. It can, take on, all sorts of enemies. And it can it's just a very decent robot. Like, It's one of those more underrated robots that people seem to not really think about a lot, but it's actually not that bad. I believe it won a tag team championship in the US series, and, I like Rick. Rick is good. And, it did well in the Minor Meltdown, so it's Rick. Reptilian. Sometimes I get this confused with Reptilion for some reason, because they got very similar names. Reptilian. I like the glossiness of it. That's about it. This is a robot that has had multiple chances to try and do something to impress the audiences or anyone for that matter, and it fails each and every time. Because it just doesn't really work that effectively. It's got this massive spinner. It doesn't lawnmower blade. It doesn't work, and it spikes. It doesn't work. Nice paint job though. Robo Chicken is next. Now, Robo Chicken technically was carried by Bulldog Breed in the tag team, but it's still a lovely robot. It's just such a great design. Robo Chicken, the head being the axe, the flipper being the feathers. It's such a brilliant, innovative. I can't pronounce that word. Fuck it. It's such a brilliant design. It's great. Who doesn't love Robo Chicken? It's going to A tier. It may not have done all the work, but it's still great. Rhubarb is next. I absolutely love the holographic purple, the purple artwork on it, because I think it reminds me of old wrapping paper that used to have that similar design, where it was that holographic, plasticky wrapping paper, and it was just great. And I think they make fun of that, in fact. used to be the best wrapping paper. So yeah, it's a great design, and in terms of effectiveness, pretty effective as well. We see in New Blood that it isn't a bad robot. It can do quite well, and given the circumstances and the opponents, it can actually do pretty decently. So it's a great robot, really, all things considered. I don't like the fact that they put the warning tape all over the borders. I think that kind of ruined the design. In Series 6, it was pretty, smooth. Here, they put that on and they keep it on for Series 7 as well, which is a real shame because I think it works better when it doesn't have that tape. But still, very good robot, like surprisingly so. Very gorgeous looking robot as well. And it's going to A tier because, well, not. All right, so RT81. Now, this one is a funny looking robot because it is a robot which it trundles along. It has this gigantic hammer. It's clearly there for a joke. And this might be quite controversial to put it as a joke bot, but hear me out. It is clearly there as a joke. It's not there to be serious. It's not going to win anything. I will say this. I think the uniqueness of its turret being the turret hammer is quite a cool gimmick. And, to give credit due, it is a great looking robot. It doesn't mean that this robot is going to go any higher than a joke bot, because realistically, if I were to put it anywhere else, it would probably be D. In terms of underrated robots, in terms of ones that, fell from grace, S3 is one, and S3 doesn't really get talked about in the same leagues as Hypno-Disc or Chaos 2, because Chaos 2 and Hypno-Disc are really, famous. S3 is still quite famous, but, man, it's a shame what happened to S3. It's such a gorgeous robot, such a wonderfully designed robot. A robot that helped inspire, future generations of robots, like Aftershock, believe it or not. And yet, S3 just got worse over time, and I think it's a case of it didn't really improve with the robots that were, up against it. It started losing earlier and earlier, and eventually, it lost in the first round of the All-Stars, and it was kicked out of the arena within 10 seconds. It's a shame. S3 is a great robot, but it's suffering because of its own, hubris, I guess you could say, or own lack of, improvements. One thing I never understood with Roboteers is when they use the same name as a robot that is well known or is, from a few years back. Sawpoint, for example. A lot of people know who Sawpoint is. They think of the big saw blade robot, which ironically the successor Demolition Man was in Series 6. And yet they thought, oh yeah, let's have a robot called Sawpoint. It's like calling a robot Spike. The amount of robots that are called Spike, it's like, why? But then again, it could be where someone could call their robot Razor or Pussycat or something like that. I will give it this. I like the design of Sawpoint. I think the Sawpoint design is great, but as a robot, it's crap. It fell apart. It doesn't do anything. It's like, what is its purpose? That's what I have to say. It's just a shame because I think the design, the artwork and all that looks really good. It looks really nice. But as a robot, Sawpoint is shit. It really is. Especially when you compare it to the other Sawpoint, which is just this really gorgeous robot. With the saw blades and all that, And plus, that one has a very infamous fight with Panic Attack. Why would you reuse a name? I hate it when they reuse names. Anyways, Serpent, I meant, not Serpent. Serpent, in Antweight World Series, Serpent was actually not that bad a robot. It didn't do brilliantly, but it didn't do poorly either. In Robot Wars, it didn't seem that awful, to be fair. It seemed to like it was aggressive in its highlight reel. And I quite like the design. It's like an early version, or an Outweight version, I should say, of Kraken, where it's like a lifter and a claw at the same time. Very unique design, really, and it's great. It's a great design, even if it is made out of Meccano. I'm going to put it into B tier, or at least I did put it into B tier, I believe, and it's right next to Behemoth. All right, Sir Chromalot. Now, Sir Chromalot, and this is depressing because Sir Chromalot used to have this gorgeous design, in Series 3, 4, 5, and 6. The tyre around the wheel hub made it look even better than before. And the Extreme 2 version is an ugly mess because they look like they've just put like a sheet around the wheel hub. And then they got the chains and the army camo, and it's got this like really thin flipper. It's a real shame to see this as its last outing, and obviously it does try to qualify for Series 7. It had this weirdly, radically different design where it's this box robot. I don't know how I don't know how they would do that, like especially when people are so used to this version of Sakurama, the round one. Makes you wonder how well it would have done. Regardless, this is just a disappointment of a design, disappointment of a robot. It didn't do very well, and it's D tier, very high D tier, but still. S.M.I.D.S.Y is next. Now, S.M.I.D.S.Y is slightly different to the Series 6 version. I actually prefer the improvements here. Series 6 1 was pretty ugly to look at. It was a very effective robot, it wasn't pretty. This one is more akin to the Series 7 version, where it's much more smoother, more, it looks nicer, so to speak. Unfortunately, it doesn't do very well in Extreme 2. His tag team partner is something, and to say the very least, it didn't do brilliantly. Still, great looking robot, even if it did get knocked out in the tag team quite early on, but it did also fight in the challenge bout, and I remember it did quite well in the first round. It survived everything, and then outlasted Hypno-Disc of all robots, and it withstood a Hypno-Disc attack. In fact, you see it, Hypno-Disc blade just sort of smacks away from it, so it's quite a durable machine as well. It just got destroyed by terahertz afterwards, but still, I think it's a great machine. It's not my personal favorite S.M.I.D.S.Y, but yeah, it's great. Snakebite. Snakebite is an interesting robot because whilst it does look like a generic crusher, that's why I said spinner. It's not spinner. It's the complete opposite. It is actually quite good. We know this because in Series 7, there's a fight against Terato, and we know that this one can just crush a robot if it comes into its jaws. It's a shame that it doesn't do brilliantly in its fights because it does look like it's a good robot. It does look like it would have been a fantastic robot, and it is decent. It's not brilliant, but it's not, awful. Spawn Again is next. Spawn Again is greatly improved from the disaster that was the Series 6 version. It's a lot more reliable, even if it does only last 2 battles, because, of course, it gets bitten by Razor. It does manage to get a flip-in on Hypno-Disc, if I recall. It withstands Hypno-Disc, something that I don't think earlier versions would have survived against. Yeah, it's decent. It's just very decent. Like, there's nothing really to write home about when it comes to Spawn Again. It's improved. So, up next is Spin Doctor. Now, this is another robot which has a name that's been repeated ad nauseum. For whatever reason, the name Spin Doctor is used a lot. It's okay, I guess. Its design is okay, I guess. It's not brilliant. Steel Sandwich. It's very basic looking. But despite it being basic looking, it has that quite nice looking, angry face on it. It's actually quite a decent robot as well. It managed to do quite well in its only competition. But yeah, it's kind of a deceiving robot because you think it wouldn't be that great, but it actually is. And that's pretty surprising. Pretty average though. Stinger, one of my all-time favorite robots. Now, Stinger, I really do prefer the original looking Stinger, where it was that, simple grey silver with, the red and yellow tail. Here, Stinger is wrapped up with tape and is painted with yellow and black, and I don't know, I don't really like that look as much. Still, Stinger, this is his final appearance, which is a real shame. It would have been great to see in Series 7. Obviously, they did think about it, but they thought they'd probably be outclassed, and as a result, Stinger never returned, which is a real shame. It would have been great to see Stinger. But yeah, Stinger is a great robot, really. still pretty good. It doesn't last long in the tag team. You know, it gets pitted in quite a unique way, to be fair, by the Steel Avenger. I quite like Stinger still. You know, it's biasness again. You know, I'm going to have to put it into S tier because it is one of my favourite robots and it's still a great design. What else can I say? You know, I actually prefer over S13 Blackament. Storm 2. Now, this is the robot which brought in the dreaded active weapon rule because the production didn't like the fact that a robot is able to beat other robots without using a weapon. And I never really understood that logic because one of the most famous, one of the greatest robots is called La Machine, and he had no weapon. It was literally just a scoop slope, and it just charged in, battered other robots, and charged back out again. And it was able to withstand spinners. You know, same with Storm 2. You know, this thing could withstand spinners. You know, the way I see it is, if you don't have an active weapon, you can put a lot more effort into your armor, into your, you know, into a lot more of the internals, a lot more of the design of the robot to prevent it from being destroyed by a spinner or an axe or anything like that. And it just baffles me that people are so against it. It's a fantastic robot, really good, deadly, fast, and ironically, I do actually prefer it with the lifter, you know, if you think about it, design-wise. But anyways, Something is next. Something is a robot which, you know, you can't help but love it. It's a very basic robot. It's not a very good robot. It never really won much, but you can't help but love it. Its design is fun. You know, that rustic look. The axe looked like it was pretty decent around this time period as well. It wasn't effective, but it did work well. And I'm yawning a lot. So, you know, great design, just ineffective. Speaking of great designs, Terror Turtle. I love the look of Terror Turtle. Terror Turtle has always been one of those great looking silly robots. It's not the best in the world. It's got a big overhead spinner, which I don't really like. I do prefer it with the flywheel. But it's just such a gorgeous design. You know, it's such a fun design. I love the fact that the turtle actually has blood coming out of its mouth as if it's eating people. Great design, but yeah, it's ineffective. In contrast, you have Terahertz. Now, Terahertz in Extreme 2 is taller than the other Terahertz because this one isn't like flat looking, it's more tall. And my god, is it a monster. And you wouldn't think that if you saw the All-Stars, because in the All-Stars it kind of got ganged up upon and it was defeated very easily. But then comes the Challenge Belt, and it is just this brutal machine that just hammers away its opponents. It destroys S.M.I.D.S.Y. It destroys Dan Tomke, it destroys all these other robots, and, you know, it does get pitted very quickly by Tornado, but still, Terahertz, a great design, gorgeous looking robot. I actually prefer it with the taller look. I am shocked that they didn't just use this version for Series 7. Like, I know they were trying to rebuild something, but still, they could have just used the older one. I don't know. Still, Terahertz goes in the top 3 in my opinion because it's just that good. Tetanus. Now, Tetanus, if it was with the claw, Tetanus would be ranking quite highly. But unfortunately, Tetanus decided they wanted an anti-flipper frame web thing. And they ended up screwing themselves because that anti-flipper web thing is not very good. It looks very ugly. It looks terrible. It acts terrible. It doesn't work. And yeah, it just doesn't look very good. And it doesn't really seem that effective at all. And it's a real shame because Tetanus is a good robot. Had it just used the claw, you know. Anyway, Steel Avenger is a great robot. It's a classic. You know, you can't help but love the Steel Avenger. The see-through look of it. It's returned. It's not that different from Series 5. It does have, I believe, a different rear. Don't really remember. Oh, dear. I don't really remember that, but still, it was very effective in the tag team. Like I mentioned earlier, it pitted Sting in a really unique way. Very good robot. Like, genuinely a good robot. And, you know, even if it hasn't improved much, it's still very good. Thermidor. what a wonderful design Thermidor is. And it's a real shame that Thermidor had this lull period in Series 5 and 6 where it was just losing in the first round and it was just doing really poorly. Because Thermidor was a beautiful robot and it's got a very powerful flipper. And I'm kind of grateful that the Annihilator exists because it gave Thermidor a chance to breathe and show off its skills. It was just depressing seeing Thermidor do poorly, and it deserves a high ranking because it is good. Like, it really is good. It lost to Can Opener and that Can Opener only. Thor is next. Now, Thor got rid of those stupid, goofy claws and just kept it as a wedge. And that is a great improvement because Thor in Extreme 2 is a really good robot. It is a robot that manages to deliver the blows. It manages to get to the grand final of the New Blood. And it is just a good-looking robot. I think this is the best looking of the classic era Thors, in my opinion. Just because of how good it looked. And I will say this, I think the hammer is a bit too long. Especially because half the time it's having to go quite a distance away before it can deliver the axe on top of its opponent. But still, it's a very good robot, very resilient, very powerful robot. It went toe to toe with Storm 2. It's really good. Very good robot. Genuinely one of the best. It's getting there though to the awesome might that is Thor from Series 8. Tiberius. Now Tiberius, it won the University Challenge, which is great because Tiberius is a great looking robot. It's always been one of like the better crushers on the classic era. And it's one of the better crushers in general. Like Razor is always number 1, but Tiberius I'd say is like up there in top 3, maybe even number 2. It's a very good robot, very good looking robot, and we see it do really well on the University Challenge. Not much else to say. It's a great robot, great crusher. Anyways, Tornado, reigning champion, very wonderfully designed machine. I love the improvements they made over the years with Tornado. I love the interchangeable weapons. I love the look of it. A very powerful robot. Now, Tornado unintentionally caused controversy in the European Championship because when it lost against Razor, of course broke down in that fight and started smoking. That's something about Razor in Extreme 2. For whatever reason, the reliability issues came back. But Tornado was given the win afterwards by the Razor team. And then they fought and they won the championship. It makes you wonder what it would have been like if Razor was there. Anyways, Tornado, great robot. Now, it does have its weaknesses, as we see in Extreme 2 in the All-Stars, but still fantastic S tier. The Typhoons, I decided I would rank them all at the same time because they're all basically the same. I love the RAF logo being the actual robots. Like, if you look at it from above, it's the RAF logo. Fantastic design. Very destructive, very good. However, they all have very obvious glaring weaknesses. They can be flipped. And, Typhoon 2 in particular, like, it didn't do very well in the Annihilator. It was immediately taken out by Can Opener and then Raging Reality. Still, the others won their own respective championships. They were pretty deadly, pretty damaging, even if it was somewhat controversial that a lot of them ganged up on the other robots and they didn't attack each other, and of course they made the excuse of, oh, well, we were going to. Yeah, no, you weren't. You weren't. Don't lie. So I'm going to just put them all into B tier because they're not like Series 7 champion worthy yet, but they are really good. And, you can see, the moment they're going to tick. Vader is next. Vader, it's a great looking robot. I'll give it that. But Vader, it doesn't motivate, it doesn't really have the oomph power. And we see that it gets easily pushed about and taken out in the challenge bout. And then it's thrown out of the arena by Matilda's Firewheel. Very brutally, in fact. It actually tore the disc in half. It's a great design, but it's pretty lacking, and it's getting worse. Speaking of great designs, Velociraptor, I think the design of it is great. I do prefer the original Velociraptor, however. I prefer what Mighty Mouse is. That sort of design for Velociraptor, but still, it's a great design. I love the fiberglass. I think it's really unique. I think overall it's a great looking robot. I think it gives it distinctiveness over Mighty Mouse in a way. Still doesn't work very well. The Velociraptor does still fumble a lot, which is a real shame. But this is actually the Velociraptor that was used from Mega Mouse later on. So great design, but yeah, not effective at all. Weldor, poor Weldor. Weldor is a robot which I feel bad for, because Weldor 1 was quite an impressive robot, is great. Weldor 2 looked nice looking. It's very confused, however. It was a very confused robot with the axe and the flipper. It didn't make sense, and it obviously didn't work out well. Weldor 3, again, looked powerful, but again, just didn't really work that well. It got flipped over and immediately could not self-right, which is a big no-no. So, poor Weldor goes into D. Exterminator still uses the Series 6 guys. This is the last time we see Exterminate with the axe. Exterminator, I like it. I like it a lot. I like Exterminator. I've always loved Exterminator. I think it's a great robot. One of the best. Genuine all-stars. It's okay in Extreme 2. It would have been better, obviously, previously, or in the future, I should say. Still, I think it's a great design, very effective, still can do a lot of damage, still can do a lot of maneuverability, a lot in its battles. Very good robot, very decent. I don't like the black spray on the bottom. I don't like that, for it to be just silver, but still, great robot, but it's going to get better. And last but not least is Zeus. Zeus is a machine that uses the forklift design, which I love the forklift design for robots. I don't know if it's just a me thing, but the forklift designs for robots have always been like one of those underrated designs for machines. I think that it's just a great look. Zeus looks great. I'll give it that. Zeus looks great. I think it looks fantastic. Unfortunately, it met Black Hole, and when it met Black Hole just kind of just threw it into the air and destroyed it. Poor Black Hole. Not poor Black Hole, poor Zeus. So Zeus didn't really have a great time. If it is in Robot Arena, suddenly Zeus is like the greatest robot ever for whatever reason. I don't get why it's so good in Robot Arena. I don't know whether the AI is just people have tuned it to be that way. But anyways, Zeus, great robot, great design, but it wasn't very effective. Maybe if we saw more of it, it could have been higher. But yeah. Poor Zeus. Anyway, so that is the entirety of the ranking. Obviously, I've just had to redo the audio for the second half of it. As you can see, Razor, Pussycat, and Terahertz are the top three, in my opinion. They are just brilliant robots, brilliantly designed, absolutely wonderful robots. Razor, just gorgeous. Terahertz, absolutely destructive, and Pussycat is, of course, a personal favourite. Firestorm and Tornado, obviously, are still up there, as is Storm 2, its debut, and my god, Storm 2 was a fantastic debut. Arg is an underrated robot, in my opinion. It's a featherweight that seems to get forgotten about a lot, because Arg is a good robot. It's very destructive, very well designed as well. Moving on to the A tier, we see Crustacean, Thor, and Exterminator, as well as the likes of Tiberius and Raging Reality. These are all really good robots, just really well designed, really effective. They didn't really go 100% though, and that's kind of what limited them to the A tier. A lot of them are really well designed, really, really effective, really good, and it shows just how good some of them are, including some oddballs like ICU, robots like that. Regardless, we got C tier. Now, C tier is depressing when you look at the first three, which is Chaos 2, Hypno-Disc, and S3, because those are three robots that should not be in C tier. But because times changed and they did not improve, they just started slipping down the rank, and as a result, they started to fumble a lot more. Chaos 2 was destroyed, Hypno-Disc was humiliated, and S3 was just... it lasted 5 seconds. Real depressing. As for I should say that is B tier, not C tier, but C tier itself, has some great wacky robots. Mighty Mouse, Fatal Attraction, really underrated robot, fantastically designed, and Major Tom, as well as some others like Killer Cat and and Spawn Again and all that. Really good robots, really good looking robots. They just didn't do very well. Very average overall, but good enough that they avoid the lower tiers. Dietor and something, Terra Turtle, Velociraptor, all these robots, great designs. A lot of great designs in Extreme 2, but a lot of them just weren't very effective. Like Dietor, I don't understand its design in Extreme 2. It just doesn't look like it was effective at all. A real shame too. But then you get onto the poor design. I will never forgive the Corkscrew team for butchering what was a really nice looking robot in Series 6. Like, it's weird how they constantly change the look of their robot each year. Like, sure, the first one, it worked, but it wasn't very effective. And, it had the kill. It was quite nice looking overall, but it was not very effective. Second one looked really good. It was very effective. It just got pitted. Third one, they decided to paint it blue with Corkscrew written on the side. And boy, when we get to the Series 7, it is going to rank even lower. The D-tier Circhrome lot shocks me because of how badly they filmed the design. It just shocks me still. Then F-tier, there's quite a few F-tiers, Dr. Fist still the worst. And of course, joke bots, there's only 2, but one is controversial. Still, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Do you agree or do you disagree?